Right, we are going to try and do the whole Q&A thing. You have been writing questions, you've been voting questions. I'm very impressed. This is when my use of tech is hopefully going to come good.
We'll see.
Let's see. Do the questions... Oh, look, there they are. Okay, so we're going to go through them and we'll see how we get on with them. We're not going to start with the top voted one. We will get to it, Ros says, but we're not going to start there. I hope that's okay. So let's go with the one with 9 votes. If I click on it, it's supposed to just come up, but...
I don't know. Well, I'll read it anyway.
Yeah,
if people can't see it, that's fine. God celebrates men's and women's differences. Oh, here it is. So is it godly and good to pursue femininity in the cultural sense, wearing dresses, pink, flowers, etc.? Should we promote that with our daughters? Great question. I will tell you, I'm very uncharacteristically dressed today. 90% of my wardrobe is bright pink and flowery. I really lean into that style of dressing. I don't think that the sort of cultural expression of femininity that is particular to 21st century Western culture has anything that particularly is essential to God's definition of womanhood. I think you can be celebrating men's and women's differences in a whole range of cultural ways that are not to do with pink is for girls, blue is for boys. Now, given that we live in a culture where there is that cultural difference, and it's really interesting to me how much that has shifted in my lifetime, where I'm sure when I was growing up there was a huge backlash against that. And, as a child I wore dungarees and polo neck jumpers and often was dressed in exactly the same boiler suit as my brother. And, it just wasn't that thing. And it's coming back. Should we embrace it? I'm not sure I want to say yes, because I think it's actually contributing to very, very unhelpful ideas in our society around gender and gender essentialism and gender norms. If a boy likes wearing a pink jumper, it doesn't make him a girl. And I think our society has got so focused on those outward expressions of what it sees as feminine and masculine that it's replaced actual definitions of masculine and feminine, male and female, with those cultural things. So should you promote that with your daughters? I mean, if your daughter loves pink dresses and flowers, absolutely don't stop her. It's fine. But, if your boy likes playing with dresses and dolls and whatever. And there's someone here who I clearly remember her son wearing high heels when we used to go around for Bible study. And I don't think that's really affected how he's grown up at all. So I wouldn't say we need to get particularly hung up on it either way. It's fine, but it's something else. Are we stuck on this question forever?
Grace, can you move? Yeah, thank you. Just Grace, you do it. You're much better. Should we go? Where do we go?
Well, let's go back to this top question, because obviously people are interested in it. Is masturbation sinful? I mean, the short answer is yes. The longer answer is yes. I hope that some of what I've tried to talk about in terms of the sort of theological significance of sex makes it clear why that is. It's not about God being a killjoy and saying, well, you people in that situation, whatever that is, you are not allowed to enjoy something amazing. The point is that if sex is about participating in understanding the divine relationships, it's about reflecting the nature of the Trinity as people who are the same but also distinct from one another. It's never about giving pleasure to oneself. It's always about giving pleasure to the other person. The Father delights in the Son, and the Son glorifies the Father. They don't glorify themselves. It's all about to the other. And so in masturbation, there's none of that. There is no other. And it's about glorifying ourselves, and therefore it is inherently sinful. But I want to be clear, just like when I was talking about earlier with pornography, sometimes it's represented as a sin that is mainly or exclusively male, and that is not the case. It's a sin that I've struggled with over the years, and it's certainly a sin that women do struggle with. So I think we can say pretty clearly, yes, it's wrong, but if you struggle with it, it's okay. It doesn't make you a worse sinner than anybody else. but seek help from the Lord and people who pastor you to help you deal with it like any other sin.
Great. I think you can probably do this on yourself because Grace has got the controls.
Okay, well, I'm just going to let her do the controls there. So can you be totally fulfilled as a woman without experiencing sex within heterosexual marriage? You've put a lot of emphasis on sexual intercourse. Yes and no. Yes, you can be totally fulfilled as a woman without experiencing sex within heterosexual human marriage. No, you cannot be totally fulfilled as a woman without one day in the future experiencing the reality of sex within the heterosexual marriage between Christ and the church. And that's the thing. We tend to think that real sex is what happens between a man and a woman in a bedroom, or, not necessarily in the bedroom, but whatever. That's not real sex at all. That is a shadow of sex. That is the type or the image of sex. What is real sex? Real sex is what will happen when Christ and his bridegroom, at the consummation of their wedding, are united for all eternity. And I promise you that at that point, none of us, whatever our sexual experiences have been now in this life, will be looking back wistfully, thinking, I just wish I'd had a bit more sex. Or I wish I'd had a bit better. Or I wish I'd had sex with that person. No, just like none of us at that point will be looking back going, Jesus is great. He's a great sacrifice. Look at those scars. But, it'd just be really nice, wouldn't it, just for old time's sake, to go back and, kill another pair of doves or sacrifice a lamb again. Of course not. You don't long for the shadow when you are experiencing the reality. So, will you ever be totally fulfilled in this life? No. Whether you're married or not, whether you have children or not, whatever your life is, no. Because our total fulfillment comes from being in Christ, comes from experiencing that true marriage, that true experience of what sex is truly for. It will not be an eternal kind of orgy between men and women. We're not going to be married to one another. Nobody's going to be having sex with the person who's their husband now, which is a good thing if you've had more than one husband. There's going to be none of that. Jesus is very clear. But we will all, as Christ's bride, experience the reality of what human sex now is pointing towards. It will be like the best orgasm you've ever had or never had forever. So it'll be amazing. So yes, you will be fulfilled, but no, not now.
Great. Where should we go next?
Oh yes, I like this one. How can you strive to be a quiet and gentle woman when you're naturally quite a loud and independent and confident person? I don't know. I have no idea. Because when you're naturally as quiet and reserved and gentle as me, okay.
It's working again now.
There we go. It's interesting, and I've struggled with this over the years because I'm not naturally quiet and gentle. I think we do have to read that in its context. It's from 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 4. I know that because for many years, this verse was so on my mind that I used to use that as my password. Because it's really good. Bible verses for passwords, they have numbers, they have capital letters, lowercase letters, and special characters. So, it's brilliant.
Good top tip, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Don't try and guess all mine, but, What is that quiet and gentle woman? It's talking about the situation of a woman who's a Christian, who's married to a non-Christian husband. How is she best going to win him over? Well, I think she needs to be a quiet woman, not in the sense of how loud her voice happens to be or not. I think she needs to be a quiet woman in the sense that she is at peace with herself in the Lord, that she is at rest, that she is not constantly going through that sort of wrestling with herself and the struggle, and should I be, more like my husband wants me to be or more like the Lord wants me to be, and where do I go? She needs to know if she's going to be an effective witness in that situation. She needs to know that she is in Christ. She needs to be at peace with that, at rest with that. And she needs to be gentle. Well, she needs to be gentle because she's got to live every day with this person. And, when you're doing evangelism, it's very different, isn't it? Many of us, I think, if you're a student, it feels like a kind of hothouse of evangelism. And part of that's just because you're spending a lot of time with people. You're spending a lot of your lives with other people, and you can kind of be really quite full on. But if you're a grown-up and you've got the same neighbour for 35 years, you can't be quite as full on with them for all of that 35 years. And even more so, if you are married to someone and they're literally there when you wake up and when you go to bed at night, you can't be going on at them about the gospel morning, noon and night, 24/7 for 50 years of your life. That's not going to be the way to win them over. You need to be gentle with them, kind with them, compassionate with them, understand what things are hard with them. So I don't think the instruction is that we should always be quiet in every sense of the word quiet at every point, or even gentle at every point. You know, there are moments where the answer to what Jesus would do is throw the tables over in the temple and start going at people with a whip. And, you know, sometimes that's what you've got to do. But I think we do need to think about how we can be the best person we can be in that circumstance that God has put us in to win people to Christ.
Brilliant. I reckon we've got time for maybe one or two more.
Okay, I'm going to pick this one.
Go.
Is there a difference between not being ashamed of your body and dressing immodestly? Yeah, so I'm not ashamed of my body. I don't think I dress immodestly. I don't own a bikini, and for that we're all grateful. But I don't think, I think that sort of modest dress, it's a thing that's associated with very particular kind of cultures. In the UK, most often with people from very Orthodox Jewish cultures or Islamic traditions. Perhaps in America, it's got a little bit more association with certain kinds of Christian expression as well. It does have a very particular thing. Often it's you've got to be covered up. My sleeves would be too short, or my neck would be too open. My dress would certainly be too short at this point. It can be a really, it's not quite wearing a burqa, but it's absolutely wearing clothes that don't really reveal anything about our bodies at all. I don't think that as Christians we're required to dress quite like that. In order to not be ashamed of our bodies doesn't, however, mean that we flaunt our bodies in any and every situation. If you can't be naked with your husband, then I think that's a problem. If you can't look at yourself naked in a mirror, then I think that's a problem. But that absolutely doesn't mean that you should walk into church on Sunday as naked as the day you were born, because you are not ashamed. You should be dressed. And you should be dressed in a way that is appropriate to the situation. So you could say, well, I'm fully dressed, but what you're actually wearing is a, skin-tight bodycon dress that stops just below your butt cheeks and, comes all the way down. Yeah, okay, I get that you're not ashamed of your body, but your body is still a precious and important thing. And actually, by dressing in that way, I think you are cheapening your body. I think you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're kind of saying very often in that sort of way that people dress, what I am is a sexual temptation. That's probably not the way you want to identify yourself. I don't think it's how Jesus wants us to identify ourselves. So, I think it's fine to wear a necklace.
That's good.
I think it's fine to wear lovely clothes and, choose things that suit you and look beautiful on you. I think it's fine to dress in a way that in our society doesn't really have any kind of sexual overtone. It's fine to show your wrists and your ankles in a way that, 200 years ago was outrageously provocative. But I don't think we want to say anything and everything goes, because at that point it's not about shame. It's a whole other issue. Yeah.
Brilliant. Grace, can you go back to the...
There we are.
Okay.
How can we help men understand what it is like to be a woman?
It's a life work, isn't it, Ros?
I don't know. Some men are better at it than others, aren't they? Some men are more willing to listen and hear and think about it. And sometimes you genuinely see men's have a light bulb moment. I remember one time being in a discussion group about various things, but one issue that came up was differences between men and women. And one of the women talked about how pretty much every time she was on the tube, and certainly if it was late in the day, she was constantly looking around to see where the blokes were, where would be her exit, who looked safe, you know, and if not actively afraid all of the time, certainly on the alert all of the time. And this bloke's jaw just dropped, and he was just like, all the time. Even if there's nobody harassing you, even if there's nobody who looks, and she's like, yeah, all the time, all the time. So sometimes it is just a matter of communication, isn't it? To say, actually, look, this is what life is like for me, in a way that I think it is probably different for you. And it would really help me if you listened and understood that, so that you don't think I'm just making a fuss about nothing. And actually, so that you know better how to relate to women, how to be supportive and helpful. And, you know, maybe there are things you need to tell me about what your life is like as a man that I have no idea about and don't understand. But actually, I could be helped to get there better. So sometimes just that sort of really honest, open communication. Sometimes I think we have to, I don't want to say make a fuss, but I kind of mean make a fuss. And you know, I'm thinking there really about things that are not about the actions of individual men, but about ways in which systems are set up that disadvantage women, that we just need to be able to say, actually, you know, so I will give you an example of this. At Church Society, we have a number of scholarships and bursary funds that we award, and we were sort of formalising it a bit and putting a notice out about it a few years ago. And I said to my boss, look, you know, I will put this out. He drafted something. I will put this out if you want, but I'm really unhappy with it because it effectively prevents women from applying. He's like, well, it's all open to men and women. I don't quite know what you mean, because, you know, none of these, well, because if you're a woman, you're very unlikely to meet this criteria. If you're a woman, you're extremely unlikely to be in this situation. And if you're a woman, this one is really going to rule you out because of this. So on the surface of it, it looks like it's open to everybody. But in practice, it was going to exclude almost all women. Anyway, we had quite a lot of back and forth. And it was more difficult than you think to solve the problem, because trusts that were set up 150 years ago tend not to be brilliantly open to men and women equally. So we had to see some working out. But we did, so that we now have things that are open to men and women, and things that clearly fit the circumstances that women are much more likely to be in. So sometimes it's just about saying, look, I know you're not thinking of this in a way that will discriminate against women or make life difficult for women, but in practice, because of all of these other things that women are more likely to be dealing with, it does. And I need you to think about that again. So, yeah, I mean, it's a constant thing, isn't it? I think all of us...
It's not a one-hit wonder, is it?
It's not a one-hit wonder. It's not a one-way thing. Sometimes we'll need to listen to them. But we will, you know, I think constantly, and think about it not just for our own sake, but for the sake of women who will come after us, or women who are in positions where it makes it harder for them to speak up or to communicate.